Welcome to Veranda CA. In this current session, we'll be discussing about advanced rulings. The authority of advanced ruling is what we'll be discussing in this session. The first thing that we need to know is the advanced ruling as far as it goes. Till 31st August 21, there are different set of rules. From 1st September 21, there are different set of rules. Rather than calling it as different set of rules, the primary intention, everything remains the same. Just that earlier it was called as authority for advanced ruling, that is your AAR. Currently it will be called as BAR, that is Board for Advanced Ruling. So it is related to advanced ruling. So till 31st August 2021, it is categorized as your authority for advanced ruling. And from 1st September 2021, this new provision of Board for Advanced Ruling is being implemented. So now, when you say advanced ruling, what is the purpose? Why is it actually required? It is covered under Chapter 19B of Income Tax Act. So Chapter 19B of Income Tax Act provides that the procedure or the details of advanced ruling. So as we said, why is this actually required? So basically, it is a scheme, as the word says. So we'll break this into two words. It is advance plus ruling. So what do you mean by the word advance? It is prior, beforehand, before something is happening or something of that kind, right? So advance is before or something before happening of a particular event. It's a ruling. So before happening of an event, you are trying to get a ruling. So when you say ruling, probably an opinion or a decision on the treatment of such particular transaction, a tax treatment of such particular transaction. This is without going into this what has been prescribed. So basically we are just defracing, that is we are just understanding the word advance and ruling as it is. So that's what we have understood. So basically it's a scheme for providing advance ruling in transactions involving non-residents or specified residents. So they are trying to say, yes, it gives you advance ruling, but it is not for everyone. It is only for persons in respect of certain transactions with non-residents, that is involving non-resident and specific residents. So this is what has been provided. So what does this achieve? This advance ruling, what does this achieve? Now let's say I file a tax return, or probably I file something based on what I've actually understood the law is. Then an year later or little after that, I have been called for various records to be examined. An assessing officer understands my case. He rules something. I dispute that. I go on an appeal, and then it may prolong, right? So it's a time-taking process. Now what happens if before me taking a decision, I file a petition, that is an application before advance authority for advance ruling, the AAR, and understand what will be the tax position and accordingly decide. So this will help in the prolonged litigation process. So it is basically avoid needless litigation and promoting better taxpayer relation. So I first itself consult with the tax department. See, this is what my transaction is. Tell me how should I treat this transaction. Once they give me a direction, I either proceed with that. If I am aggrieved, of course, I will have next steps forward. So typically it is like this authority for advance ruling is basically which helps in avoiding needless litigation and promoting better taxpayer relationship. This is what you are calling as the what exactly is advance ruling is all about. So the AAR is all about. Now this AAR application, we said it is not for everyone. It is not for everyone. It is exclusively for transactions involving non-residents or specific residents. So we'll see one by one here. So basically the first one is, it is about a non-resident. So non-resident applicant, the applicant itself is non-resident. He is probably going to undertake a transaction or already taken up a transaction. So transaction which is either been undertaken or is proposed. So it's in the process of undertaking or it is already undertaken. So this is what you call as a particular application. So non-resident applicant here is what you are calling it as a non-resident applicant can be an applicant which has been undertaken or proposed to be undertaking a particular transaction. So this is what you call it as non-resident applicant. The second applicant is a resident applicant, but this resident applicant is going to transact only with this non-resident. The tax liability of a non-resident. So whatever liability is going to arise to a non-resident. So now a resident transacts with a non-resident. This non-resident's income is taxable in India. So there is a tax liability here. So the tax liability of a non-resident arising out of a transaction which has either been undertaken or is proposed to be undertaken by a resident applicant with such non-resident. So there is a resident, there is a non-resident. So it's a transaction between a resident and a non-resident, where the resident is the applicant here to determine the tax liability of a non-resident. So this is the second situation. The second situation, there is a subclause in second situation. Here also it's a resident applicant. So tax liability of resident applicant arising out of a transaction which has been undertaken or proposed to be undertaken by such applicant. Here they are not saying the other person is a non-resident. So probably they are only giving the one side of the picture. They are saying the applicant is a resident. In the previous clause we saw applicant is a resident, but he is going to undertake or has already undertaken a transaction with a non-resident. He wants to determine the tax liability of such non-resident. But here they are not saying it is with a non-resident. Here it is very simple. A resident applicant, but when we said it is for resident applicant, we said specified resident applicant. So obviously we'll understand in the subsequent slide for whom will this be particularly applicable. Whom do you call a resident applicant according to the subclause 2A. Now, an issue relating to computation of total income. So the next condition is there is an issue relating to a computation of total income which is pending before an income tax authority. So there is already an issue which is pending before the IT authority or the tribunal, the ITAT. So it is either pending before the income tax authority or an ITAT. What it is an issue relating to computation of total income only. So it is not related to something else, it is only related to computation of total income. So that is the next category. Now before going to this last category, we will just understand something else also. When we are speaking about this resident applicant transacting with a non-resident, or a resident applicant in certain transaction which he is entering into, or the last one, that is computation of total income, where the issue is pending before the income tax authority or the ITAT. In these three cases, such determination, the tax liability or the total income or whatever that we are talking about, in clause 2 and 2A, we are talking about the tax liability. In 3, we are talking about the computation of total income. So in these cases, the determination shall include any decision on question of law or fact. So here the question can be either on the law or the fact also. So there is a widened way of providing an advance authority ruling. So this AAR for these reasons, that is 2, 2A and 3, where a resident applicant for a transaction with non-resident trying to determine the tax liability, where a resident applicant who has entered into a certain activity where he wants to determine the tax liability, and the third one, the third clause says a person who wants to determine the computation of total income for an issue pending before an income tax authority or before the ITAT, that is Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. For these three situations, the determination of the tax liability or the computation of total income shall also include question of law or facts also. So that could also be raised before the advance authority of ruling. So this is what it is. So now moving on to this fourth one. So in the case of fourth one, what we are trying to understand is, we said there is chapter 10A. Even when we are discussing about this double taxation avoidance agreement, we said there are exceptions of this chapter 10A. So this chapter 10A is for general anti-avoidance rule. So this provision says whether an arrangement which is proposed or proposed to be undertaken by a person, by any person, such person, the classification of such transaction will fall under this chapter 10A. What does chapter 10A says? It is an impermissible avoidance arrangement. So a particular transaction which might fall under this category of chapter 10A, such person who is entering into that can file an application. So that is what you mean by the last clause of this GAR related provision. So whichever is related to chapter 10A. So these are all the possible scenarios in which an applicant can file an application before authority for advance ruling, AAR. So these are the scenarios. Everywhere we said a non-resident applicant, a resident applicant. So right, now we need to understand in each of these clauses, what do you mean by the term applicant? Who is an applicant? We know on what aspects we need to file. We know that when a transaction is proposed or undertaken by a non-resident, he can file the non-resident applicant can file an application for ruling. We also said a resident with a non-resident, a resident himself in certain transactions, GAR related. For everything we said, for all these scenarios, who shall be the applicant? So when you say who shall be the applicant, we'll understand that with respect to for each of the clauses. The first clause where we said a non-resident applicant, it shall basically be a non-resident. Who is a non-resident? A non-resident who is classified as a non-resident under section 6. So basically, who has not satisfied the basic condition itself. So such person, the non-resident, is liable to be an applicant. So not liable, who can be an applicant for the purpose of transactions undertaken or proposed to be undertaken by the non-resident, where he wants to determine the tax liability. So he wants to determine the transaction. What is the tax impact of such transaction? So that is the first clause. The second clause, we said a resident applicant transacting with a non-resident wants to determine the tax liability of that non-resident for that particular transaction. So in this case, we said resident. So we have also quoted the forms here. You can actually look at it. So such person will be filing in that form. So this resident will be filing an application in form 34D. So this 34D is what a resident can enter. In the third category, we said a resident application for determination of tax liability, but we did not restrict the transactions with a non-resident. We have just said for the transaction for which such applicant is entering into. So here, if it is commonly for all the residents, then there must be some, it will be so wide. So to have a restriction, to have a limitations of as to this particular provision, what happens here is they are saying it is applicable only when the tax liability is arising out of one or more transaction is 100 crores or more. So this notification in 2014 provides that the resident that we are specifying in clause 2A, subclause 2A, we are stating the resident whose tax liability of such transaction is going to be more than 100 crores. Imagine the word tax liability. It's not the transaction value that they are referring. What they are referring is the tax liability which is more than 100 crores. So notification number 73 has provided this in 2014. So this is for 2A. So since we said 2A, 34D is for 2, 34DA is for 2A. So you need not remember this much. So it is basically 34C, 34D and 34DA for the subclause 2A. Now the next subclause that we were talking about was basically the next category where it is for determination of the computation of total income. So we are going to file an application for computing a total income where the issue is pending before income tax authority or the ITAT, the income tax appellate tribunal. Here the applicant was a general word. It only said applicant. It did not say resident. It did not say non-resident. So, but it's typically for a resident applicant. So here it says is a resident. The applicant is a resident falling within any such category. So who is a resident? Who is either a resident ordinary resident or a resident not ordinary resident. So such resident has to file an application in 34E. Which resident? It says the central government may by notification state a class or category of persons as an applicant falling under this category. They have already specified. They have specified a class of persons. So they are basically these PSU companies, that is your public sector undertakings, who was basically a public sector company classified under section 2 clause 36A. So this has been provided in the notification dated 2000 where it said public sector company is the resident that is being referred in clause 3 where it says it is for computation of total income for issues pending before income tax authority, for income tax authority or your income tax authority, or what do you mean by as income tax appellate tribunal. So that is what you are calling it as the next category. Then last category which we saw was basically a person who has entered into an impermissible avoidance agreement as per chapter 10A, that is your GAR, General Anti-Avoidance Regulations. So this GAR is basically the person who has entered into that agreement only. The clause 4, subclause 4 of section 245NB says that when a person has entered into a transaction or is proposing to enter into a transaction which could be categorized as an impermissible avoidance agreement under chapter 10A, then that person is eligible for an applicant. So whatever we are referring here is this person is that person who is proposing to enter into an agreement or who has entered into an agreement. So that is what we are referring here. For this person, it is in Form 34EA. So these are the scenarios in which advance ruling can be applied. The applicants who can apply, the corresponding applicants who can apply for this advance ruling. So this is discussed in section 245Q. Now, when we set this advance authority ruling, we must understand the composition of the authority. So when let's say it's a bench, right? When you say a bench in tribunal and other things, it's a team of members who will be involved in making a decision on this particular matter. So section 245O provides the composition. This composition, whatever we are seeing right now in this particular slide, is only till 25th May 2017. So then subsequently it was the different composition. When you say different composition, there are different set of rules to determine the composition. So as far as now, we'll understand what was there earlier and then later understand what is there right at this point in time. So basically, there will be a chairman, there will be a vice chairman or multiple vice chairman. So that is the next category. Then you will have a revenue member and a law member. So these are the 4 categories of members that you will have: a chairman, a vice chairman, a revenue member and a law member. So chairman is basically a judge of the Supreme Court. So he must be a judge of the Supreme Court, or he could be a judge of the High Court also. When you say High Court, he could either be the Chief Justice or a judge at least for 7 years. So this is the what you call an eligibility for being a chairman. So such number of vice chairman. When you say such number of vice chairman, how many ever vice chairman is required for the composition for the team of advance authority of rulings? You could have that many vice chairman, but typically they must be a judge of High Court. So only then they are eligible. And then the third category we said is a revenue member. Revenue member, please note this, revenue member earlier, there are advance ruling was there for both income tax and indirect tax matters, that is customs and other things. But currently this customs has been removed. So what it stood earlier was both income tax, where the member will be an IRS, that is Indian Revenue Service, who is qualified to be a member of the board, that is Central Board of Direct Taxes. So such member is what is covered here. And respect to Indian customs and other things, who is qualified to be the member of the such board, that is Central Board of Excise and Customs. So these are called as the revenue members, an IRS or a qualified person to this Indian Customs and Central Excise. Then a law member, who is basically from the Indian Legal Service, is qualified or is eligible for being an additional secretary to the government of India. So whatever is the eligibility requirement for being an additional secretary to the government of India, he must satisfy such requirement. So that is what you are calling as law members. So these are all the various members of this authority: a chairman, a vice chairman, a revenue member and a law member. So when you say these are the members, we must understand what are all the other applicabilities. So that is also discussed in section 245O, where what are all the other conditions or terms and other things that we must understand as far as this AAR is concerned. So the first thing is whatever is related to various requirements. When you say chairman is there, we must understand what is the salary that will be paid to the chairman, what will be the allowance paid, what will be the other terms and conditions for his appointment and other things. So for such things, it may be prescribed. That is, a section or particular notification might prescribe on what will be the terms and conditions of these particular situation, that is salaries, allowances and other terms and conditions of the members. So that could be provided in a separately. It might be prescribed separately by the central government. So the central government shall also have additional. So when you say authority of advance ruling, you have 4 officers: chairman, vice chairman, revenue member, law member. With these 4 people alone, you probably cannot manage the huge number of applications that are coming your way, right? So you need additional staff. So the central government shall provide of officers and employees that are required to discharge the functions of that particular the committee, the AAR committee. So for this person, for this team, whoever is any number of officers or employees that are required to probably undertake this functions of that AAR, such such employees shall be provided by the central government, shall be appointed by the central government. And then whatever powers and benches that we are talking, when you say a bench, when you say one bench, so basically one bench, when you say a bench, the bench will generally constitute, will be headed by chairman. So it will be headed by a chairman and it will have other members apart from the chairman. So whatever powers that is being provided, whatever powers has been provided to this bench will be eligible. The chairman and the members will have the powers and functions to discharge the duties of the AAR. So the composition will be a chairman and these members that we are talking about. And whenever there is any vacancy, let's say when you say vacancy, this vacancy is split into two subsections, 6A and 6B. 6A provides what about in case of death, resignation or otherwise. So it provides three reasons. So something like your death or resignation, what happens in such scenario? In such scenario, the senior-most vice chairman, the senior-most, so the word is senior-most vice chairman shall act as the chairman until the date a new chairman is appointed. So till a new chairman is appointed to fill such vacancy, what happens is till that period, the senior-most vice chairman shall become the chairman of that particular thing. And the last one is 6B. So basically when you say 6B, we said when it's about vacancy, there are two types of vacancies. One vacancy is about death, resignation or otherwise. Another vacancy could be a general absence. So when you say absence, they are not available for a short period of time, not a permanent absence, for some short period of time. So when you say owing to absence, illness or any other cause. So some absence for any reason or illness or any other cause, if that is the reason, then the senior-most vice chairman shall discharge the functions. So whatever we are talking about, the senior-most vice chairman shall discharge the functions of the chairman until the date on which chairman resumes his duty. In 6A we said till a new chairman is appointed, but in 6B we said it's only a temporary absence. It's because of illness or something of that kind. So for that portion of time, for that period of time, senior-most vice chairman will act as a chairman. Subsequently, when the chairman resumes his duty, in that particular point in time, the chairman will again continue to be the chairman himself. So that's what 6B is about. The next subsection 7 talks about what is the actual composition of one bench. When we said bench, when we said members, we said there is a chairman, there is a vice chairman, there is a revenue member, there is a law member. We said 4. But when you say a bench, what accordingly consists a bench? So it says a bench shall have a chairman or the vice chairman as the head of that bench. So it could either have a chairman or the vice chairman, not both. It is only chairman or a vice chairman, and it will include one revenue member, one law member. So totally 3 members. So one chairman, one revenue member, one law member. So these 3 put together will form a bench for this AAR. And this AAR is primarily will be located in the Delhi, that is National Capital Territory of Delhi. And its benches wherever required, wherever the central government by notification say, okay, you can have a bench in Mumbai, you can have a bench in Kolkata, you can have a bench in Chennai. So if central government prefers so, by notification they might appoint benches outside this Delhi also. But the primary location of this AAR will be the National Capital Territory of Delhi. So that's what we are talking about. So the authority shall be located in Delhi. Now, when we speak about this, we said from 26th May, the rules changes, right? Till 25th May only, we said whatever we discussed now consists of the provisions. From this 26th May 2007, the terms and conditions are defined in a different manner. So whenever we said terms and conditions, we said central government may by notification provide what are all the terms and conditions. So what happens is, what do you mean by the terms and conditions? We said salary, allowances and all those things. So typically there are few more things that are discussed here from 26th May 2000. One is the qualification, the appointment. There is qualification is who can be a chairman, who can be a revenue member, who can be a law member. So this is what you call by qualifications. Next is appointment. So probably in what circumstances someone can be appointed is appointment. What is the terms of office? So what is the period they can continue to be in that particular position? let's say they can be a chairman for so many years. So that term of office is also needs to be provided, right? So that also needs to be provided. And then what is the salary? What is the allowance? What happens? When can someone resign? What happens when someone resigns? When can someone be removed? What happens when someone is being removed? And any other terms and conditions for the chairman, vice chairman, or any other member, that is your revenue member and the law member. So what is this? So this shall be governed. Whatever we are talking about says this shall be governed by section 184 of Finance Act 2017. So the Finance Act 2017 in section 184 of such act provides all this. So the Income Tax Act says, see, 12 till 25th May 2017, whatever I have actually stated in the provisions, take that into consideration. When I say chairman must have an experience of 7 years of judge as an high court judge, consider that. But from 26 May 2017, whatever is provided in section 184 as terms and conditions, please take that into consideration. So that is what is being provided from 26th May. So what is this section 184? So section 184 is basically, we said, central government may generally make rules whenever required as prescribed, right? So they may prescribe what will be the terms and condition. We saw in subsection 4. So now this section 184 provides that. They provide all this. They provide the qualification, they provide the appointment, they provide the term of office, salary, allowances. So everything of this kind is provided through section 184. So that is what we need to understand. So, and this another provision which talks about this, since the terms and condition is provided, there is also maximum time limit provided for holding office. So when you say holding office, shall hold office as specified in the rules made by the central government. They have specified a timeline. So they have specified a timeline in 245 OA. They have said the period can be up to 5 years. So the rules which is being notified by the central government through B section 184 of Finance Act 2017 or any other provisions that are meaning, in that they may come out with a different time period for the office, but it cannot exceed 5 years. So whatever section provides, so section provides maximum. So section provides you maximum eligible term of office, which is 5 years. But is what actually is provided in the law, that is in the provisions, section 184 and subsequently in the rules being prescribed, it is 4 years. The maximum period one can hold office is 4 years. Similarly, maximum age limit is also prescribed. Maximum age limit of the chairman, vice chairman, the members are also prescribed. When you say vice chairman here, it includes members. So vice chairman and members. So for chairman, the maximum age limit is 70 years. Please understand, whatever we are seeing here, that is 5 years or 70 years or 67 years, is the maximum possible time limit which income tax has set. But when it comes to this section 184 of Finance Act 2017 or subsequently based on any rules exclusively for this purpose, there an age could be prescribed which cannot exceed this but can be lesser than this. Similar to what we said, 5 years is the maximum limit. What we have discussed is 4 years. And the chairman age limit is 70 years, whereas the vice chairman and other members is 67 years. So it is 67 years. That is the maximum age limit. So this is about the terms and conditions and the other relevant factors for this advance ruling committee. Section 245P provides relating to something about this. When can an order of this advance authority ruling be questioned in certain circumstances? So that is what section 245P is. Basically, this AAR has passed an order. Now, after passing this order, can it be questioned based on any provisions of advance ruling? So it says no proceedings or the pronouncement, that is the order, shall be questioned or can be treated as invalid. So let's say they are talking about whether it can be questioned or whether the validity can be questioned merely, see the word here, merely of the existence of any vacancy or defect in the constitution. Again, so what they are trying to say in 245P is, yes, I have said there must be a chairman, a vice chairman, and a set of team, revenue member, law member. A bench must comprise either a chairman or vice chairman with this revenue member and law member. But just because there is a vacancy there, just because there is a defect in that constitution, can we say the proceedings is not valid? The pronouncement of the advance ruling is not valid. Can we say this? No, we cannot say this. So at any point in time, a ruling or a particular pronouncement cannot be held invalid just because, understand the word merely, just because there is any vacancy or defect in the composition of the authority. So that cannot rule advance ruling as invalid. So that's what we are understanding. And next one is an application. That is, when you say you need to make an application, we saw who is eligible to make an application. That is, on what scenario an application can be made, who shall be the applicant. So we discussed about the scenario and the applicant. Correct? We discussed this. Now, in this scenario, we are trying to understand what is the process of application. So basically, an applicant who wants to obtain an advance ruling may make an application stating the question. What is the question? It's plain and simple, right? So we said if it's a non-resident relating to a transaction, a resident with a non-resident relating to tax liability, determining the tax liability. So what is that your question? What is the question that you wanted to understand with respect to the transaction or the tax liability or the computation of total income? What question do you have on that? So that is what you are talking about with respect to this particular scenario. So an application should contain the question for which you are seeking an application. So now we have to see what else is required. In most of the cases in appeal tribunal, we said a fee has to be paid, right? A fee has to be paid while filing an appeal, and only then the appeal itself will be allowed. So similarly, here also they say in Rule 44E, fees has been provided. What is the fee that must be paid while filing an application? So before filing an application, the fee must be paid. Only then the application itself will be considered as valid. So for this, they have given a range. So basically, for these three sections, that is 1, 2 and 2A, that is what was 1? 1 was non-resident for understanding the tax applicability of a transaction. 2 was a resident transacting with a non-resident trying to determine, that is wanted to determine the tax liability of such non-resident. What was 2A? A resident who wants to understand the tax liability of the transactions entered by him. Such resident, we said, whose turnover is more than this 100 crores, right? The transaction, the tax liability of such transactions is more than 100 crores. Only then he is eligible. So that was what 2A was about. Now in these three categories, so typically we have left out the third category and the fourth category. That is third subclause and the fourth subclause. Totally there are 5 scenarios. So when you say scenarios, there are totally 5, right? So in this 5 scenario, 3 is as a slab rate. So 3 as a slab rate. So when you say 3 as a slab rate, so depending upon the transaction volume, your fee changes. Whereas the other 2 is a fixed rate. Fixed fee, rather than rate, I should use the word fee. So slab fee or a fixed fee. So what is slab fee for subclause 1, 2 and 2A? So if it is less than 100 crores, that is if it does not exceed 100 crores, then the fee is 2 lakhs. If it is between 100 and 300 crores, it is 5 lakhs. If it exceeds 300 crores, then it becomes 10 lakhs. So 2, 5 and 10. So up to 100 it is 2, between 100 and 300 it is 5, above 300 is 10 lakhs. For any other applicant, in all cases, for all others, let's take for other applicants, the fee will be 10,000. That is a fixed fee. What we said was fixed fee, which will be 10,000. So this is the fee. This is specified in Rule 44E. Now, an application, when it's filed, it shall be accompanied. So the application itself shall be accompanied by this proof of payment of fees. So all these transactions that we are talking about, whenever we are seeing a fee must be paid, we are saying that fee must be paid, only then an application must be filed. So it must be accompanied to claim the fees. So that is one of the important things. So this is also specified in Rule 44E. So the fees is also provided. this is also provided. So that's what you are calling here. An applicant may withdraw an application. So you have already filed an application. Now after filing an application, you feel that within 30 days, that is within 30 days from the date of application, you might think that the whatever application you have filed is not required. Let's say that after filing, suddenly after the 10th day or 12th day, the applicant realizes I should not have filed this application at all. It is not necessary at all. In this case, what happens is I can withdraw this application. So I can withdraw within 30 days. So that's what you are calling it as the time limit for withdrawing. So now that is what it's about. We understood about what are all the composition is about and till the 25th May 2017, and we also understood how to file an application, what will be the fee and all those things. Now we said the one that we already discussed till now, what we have been discussing is only applicable till 25th May 2017 because the provision says central government may prescribe the terms and conditions for appointment, term of office, salary, allowance or any other thing through a separate notification. So and for that they said section 184 of Finance Act 2017 might provide such terms and conditions. So this is what they are actually referring to. Now this section 245O also provides this composition. We said it is applicable till 25th May 2017. Now what does this section says as a composition? It again, as we said, it's a chairman, it's a vice chairman, it's a revenue member, law member. There is no change in that. But here the Supreme Court, they say it's a judge. Whether he is a judge currently or he has been a judge. He was earlier a judge of Supreme Court. But currently we are saying he is a judge or he was a judge of Supreme Court. So they are adding that in this new composition. And then they are also saying a Chief Justice of High Court. Earlier we said a judge with 7 years experience as High Court can also be considered. That is no more applicable from 26 May 2017. Now please hold on. When I am saying what is applicable from 26 May 2017, we are going to talk about another revision which is applicable from 1st September 2021. So the Chief Justice of the High Court is also is or has been. So that is also a change from what was there in 25th May to what is there from 26th May. It includes is or has been a judge or the Chief Justice of the High Court here. So that's what we mean by. As far as Vice Chairman, again a judge of High Court. Here also the word his or has been included. So this is also an amendment. Revenue, there is no change in revenue member, IRS member or the member of who is eligible to be this member in this Central Board of Excise and Customs. Similarly, a law member, there is a change. They are saying a combined period of 10 years. He has either been a district judge or an additional district judge. So this is also amended. So from 26 May 2017, it is not that additional secretary. We said who has the power, who has the eligibility to be appointed as an additional secretary to the government of India. That is not applicable. So now what you are talking is for 10 years being a district judge or an additional district judge is what you are referring to here for the law member. So that's about this provision. So with that we have understood what is the new composition from 26th May 2017. So now what happens as far as the procedure on receipt of an application. So we said an application is made. Once an application is made, we said form 34C, 34D, DA, 34E, 34EA. So for all these applications once made, what is the procedure for such application is discussed in 245R. So what is the first step that is taken is a copy of various records is obtained. So copy of this application is forwarded to the principal commissioner or commissioner. So the relevant jurisdiction, the relevant jurisdictional principal commissioner or commissioner, a copy will be forwarded to them, and if required, they might be asked to furnish relevant records relating to this application. So that is the first step. So a copy of application is submitted. A response will be requested from the principal commissioner or commissioner. When you say response, it's actually not a written response or something. They might be asked to furnish. They might be asked to furnish the relevant records of such particular document. So that's the first step. Second step is whatever has been furnished will be examined. So that's the next step. So after examining the AAR might either allow the application or reject the application, right? So allow or reject. Now when you are rejecting, what have we discussed as far as this income tax goes? Whenever we said it's an assessment or some proceeding that is happening, no order can be passed negative to the assessee without providing an opportunity, So that's what it said. So whenever he wants to reject an application, he must provide an opportunity either in person or through an authorized representative. And then he can reject. So only then he can actually reject. So he has to provide an opportunity and then reject. So this is step 1. Rejection is only step 2. He cannot reject without giving an opportunity. So that's what we said. No rejection can be provided to the subsection unless opportunity has been given to the application being heard. So whatever reasons, let's say he wants to reject an application for a few reasons, such reasons must be specified in the order, So it is a written order where reasons for rejection is also specified. So that is what is there. So first you receive the copy of the application, forward a copy, you receive the application, you forward the copy to the principal commissioner or commissioner, and then you examine the particulars, you request assessee to appear for any opportunity to be provided. You may reject on providing him an opportunity. If you are rejecting, you have to list down the reasons why you are rejecting. And this application cannot be allowed on certain situations. So when we said not allowed, it means an application is straightforward not allowed. So certain questions or certain scenarios, it is not at all allowed, because we have already discussed the scenario, right? So 5 scenarios in which it is applicable. Now they say if such situation is already pending before the income tax authority or the income tax appellate tribunal, then they cannot allow. But if you actually remember, we saw subclause 3 where we said determination of computation of total income of a particular person where such matter is pending before IT authority or pending before ITAT. So that was a very specific scenario. So that is not considered here. So other than 3, for all other scenarios, that is your 1, 2, 2A and then 4. For all these scenarios, if the matter is actually pending before the income tax authority or the tribunal, then it cannot be applied. As far as court goes, no application is entertained. If the issue is pending before court, an application cannot be allowed under AAR. And they cannot consider if it involves fair market value. If the issue involves determining the fair market value of any property, it shall not be considered. So these are all situations where an application shall not be allowed. And the last one is relates to a transaction or issue which is designed prima facie for avoidance of tax. Here also we have 2 exceptions. That is the third one we said, where a public sector company for computation of total income or a person who wants to enter into an impermissible avoidance agreement under Chapter 10A. In these 2 scenarios, since it is already covered there, they are not excluding. So since you say you can file an application to understand whether such transaction will be treated as impermissible avoidance agreement or not. Will that be considered as avoidance of tax or not? This is a scenario discussed as a proper way of applying. So that is not covered here. What is covered is for other transaction, that is in this case it is 1, 2, 2A. For all these 3 cases, if it is relating to a situation where it is relating to avoidance of tax, if it is the agreement itself, the transaction itself is designed in such a way where it is prima facie for avoidance of tax, then also they cannot allow. So that is about your cases where an application will not be allowed at all. So it's a straight no. The last one is, what about the order? Now an application is accepted and now you are taking care of it, so you are discussing and everything is happening. So once you have actually passed an advance ruling, you have proposed advance ruling, that order shall be sent to the applicant. So applicant will be sent a copy. principal commissioner or commissioner of that particular jurisdiction. So they shall receive a copy of it, and then there is a timeline involved in it from the 6 months of the receipt of application. So they will have to complete within 6 months from the date of receipt of application. So that is the timeline for completing this order, and such order must be sent to the applicant and to the principal commissioner or the commissioner. So that is also another thing we are talking about. And applicability section 245 is basically once an order is passed, it shall be applicable. It shall be applicable for the person who has sought it. That is, an applicant would have actually sorted this application. So for such application, for such applicant, this provision, this ruling is applicable. Similarly, in respect of the transaction in relation to which ruling had been sought. So for such transaction, so if there are similar transactions, the same AAR might apply. And similarly, for such officer, so this is officer, this is person, this is transaction. So this is how the applicability goes. So it is applicable to the person who sought, it is applicable to the similar transaction for which it is sought, it is applicable to the concerned officers who have sought this, that is that jurisdiction, one which falls under the respective principal commissioner or commissioner. So advance ruling shall be binding, advance ruling shall be binding as aforesaid unless there is a change in law or fact. So whatever advance ruling is proposed will continue to be valid, will continue to be valid till there is a change in law or facts on the basis of which the advance ruling has been pronounced. So whatever basis it was pronounced, if that is undergoing a change, then advance ruling will undergo a change, otherwise it shall be binding for that entire period. So that is what the advance ruling is about. So we discussed about the procedure, what happens after an application is filed, how it is discussed, and how an order is passed, and all those things we discussed. Now, after passing this order and all those things, what happens if the entire proceedings that actually was carried out was on the basis of fraud or misrepresentation? What happens when the entire information that you have obtained is the entire advance ruling was based on the facts or informations filed which is fraud or misrepresentation of facts? What happens in that case? I don't think I need to explain this scenario as it is. So once you understand that the representation made by the taxpayer, representation made by the assessee to the respective the advance ruling or this whatever was provided to the principal commissioner or commissioner, that such shall be considered to be void ab initio. So we all would have studied this word in Contracts Act. So what does Contract Act says about this void ab initio? It is not valid from the beginning, that is from the initial day it is not valid. So that is what you call it as void ab initio. So thereupon all the provisions of this act, all the provisions of this act shall apply. So everything shall apply as if this was never entered. So as if it was never entered at all. So that's what you are meaning by. So the moment it is decided it is void ab initio, from the time whatever period it was actually valid, for that period also it shall not be it shall be treated as invalid because it is void ab initio. So from day one it shall be considered to be invalid, and whatever repercussions, whatever consequences he has to face because of that must be faced. So that is about section 245T, which talks about a situation where an order pronounced by this authority for advance ruling could be held as void. So that is what this is about. Now, what are the powers? So we said he can examine, he can call an assessee and all those things, right? So what is that? So generally there is this section 133(1) in your general civil court laws, not your income tax act. So what it provides, the power provided is discovery and inspection. So you are free to discover the information, inspect an information. You can enforce an attendance of a particular person to ask him to come in front of you and examine such records or whatever. The officer, that is the authority for advance ruling, can issue commission. Issue commission is basically providing a short decision or a short opinion on what he thinks it, and he might ask the assessee to respond to that. So commissions might be issued, and finally he might compel production of books of accounts or any records that he wants. So this can also happen. So this is what we are calling by powers of the authority for advance ruling. So when you say powers of the authority for advance ruling, it is similar to civil code powers, whichever we have already discussed in income tax authorities also. What is the power of an assessing officer? Same power: discovery and inspection, enforce or attendance of a person, issue commission, and then finally compelling production of books of accounts. So this is what is the power. So this entire proceeding before this authority for advance ruling is a court. It's like a civil court proceeding. So it will be considered as a civil court proceedings under the laws of this criminal procedure. So under this law, that is the law which generally governs your legal judicial proceedings. So under that law, this proceeding, that is whatever has happened before authority for advance ruling, will be considered as a civil court proceeding. So that's what it is. So it is deemed to be a civil court proceedings. And what is the procedure? That is now subject to the provisions of such a power to regulate its own proceedings. So when you say the procedure, we spoke about 245R. What is the procedure of the application? So what they say is whatever powers, whatever procedure that needs to be followed under this authority advance ruling, the concerned team, that is the authority, the 3-member team, the chairman, the revenue member and the law member shall have their power, shall have their own power to regulate its own procedure. So they have that extra power to regulate its own procedure in whatever way that it could required. So whatever power they wanted to exercise under this act, they have the power to regulate their own procedure in that relevant matter. So that is what 245V is about. So with this, we have almost discussed all the provisions relating to authority for advance ruling. So when we said what happens from 1st September 2021, we said it's changing from AAR to what? What did we say? BAR. So BAR is basically Board for Advance Ruling. Now, what is the reason? There is already an authority there. There is a team there. There is a constitution there. There is a terms and condition provided. Everything is provided. So what is the requirement of change? Basically, we said it must require a chairman, it must require a vice chairman, and revenue member, law member. When you say these, if you actually look at it, we speak about Supreme Court judge, we speak about Chief Justice of High Court. Now, what is the possibility that these people will not be available for all these discussions? So there is a huge possibility. So because of this, all these reasons, huge pending started to happen. That is, so much of cases started accumulating just because the vacancy, there is a vacancy in the post of chairman or vice chairman. So just because of this has happened, it becomes in a very difficult situation to the taxpayers for not being able to come to a conclusion on how will it impact the transaction, what will be the impact of tax in the proposed transaction. So it became very difficult. So the central government decided, instead of this authority for advance ruling, the board for advance ruling will be constituted from 1st September 21. What is the change, right? Because we are saying there is a vacancy. So when you say vacancy, if you actually think a little deeper, there should not be any vacancy. So what can happen is, instead of appointing some judge, some chief justice or something of that kind, why don't you have your own members, the persons forming part of income tax department? Thereby you will not have a vacancy, right? So what happened is they created the board for advance ruling in such a manner that it will be a 2-member board. It's not a 3-member like what we saw, that is chairman or vice chairman and one revenue member and one law member. It's not that. Here it is only a 2-member board where each member not being below the rank of chief commissioner. So it is chief commissioner and above. So when you call chief commissioner above, you have principal chief commissioner, right? So chief commissioner and above. So above this rank, so not below the rank, you can appoint as a member. So they might form as a member. How many members are there in a board? It is 2 members. So it is not 3. Earlier in AAR, we saw 3. So now in BAR, it is 2, right? So that's what the comparison is. Now, the Finance Act 2021 said, the central government make rules and schemes in this behalf, also to make a faceless assessment. So when you say faceless assessment, it basically we have discussed, right, to create a transparency, to reduce this influence of these assessees, to create a balance of resources, to have a balanced resources so that everyone are equally provided with assignments and all these things, right? We have discussed this plenty of times, right? What is the benefit of having faceless scheme? So similarly here also the central government may make scheme for the purpose of this bar, and if required they might also make a scheme for faceless. First we will discuss about what they have made it for the purpose of bar. What are the rules that they have notified? What is the scheme that they have specified? So they have so far constituted 3 boards. So far they have constituted 3 boards. It's basically board for advanced ruling 1 and 2. So the first 2 is in Delhi. The third one is constituted in Mumbai. So this will be the 3 boards. So board for advanced ruling 1 and 2 is in Delhi. The third one is in Mumbai. So that's what we are discussing as far as the board structure, that is how many boards is constituted. Now we moving on, we have to understand that moment we said whenever there is an issue pending, right? Whenever there is an issue pending before income tax authority or the ITAT, you cannot file an application because the application will not be allowed if the issue is already pending before the income tax authority or the ITAT or the court. So similarly, it very specifically stresses cannot pursue both remedies. So it says a resident applicant cannot pursue both remedies. So when there is already an appeal pending before ITAT, an application before bar in respect of that issue of an issue cannot be applied. So that is a restriction, which is right. If you actually look at it, it's very right. It's very perfect to say, since the issue is already pending before the ITAT, why should I again discuss the same issue? You are anyways discussing with the ITAT, why should I discuss? So we saw this, and we saw an exception earlier where we said if it is related to this public sector company which is filing for this computation of total income, in that case it is only relevant to matter which is pending before IT authority or appeal. So other than that, we said there is no remedy available. So you cannot try to claim remedy in both. So that's what this provision says. And similar to what we saw in 245P, whereby no proceedings can be held to be invalid just because there was a vacancy or a defect or some issue in the proceedings, that is the structure. So that's what we said. So a vacancy or a defect cannot invalidate the proceedings. We saw this in 245P, that will continue for bar. So whatever was in existence for R will now continue for bar. So now that's the only change, otherwise section 245P continues as such. Similarly, whatever application, we said application has to be made after filing a prescribed fee, right? So whatever fee that we are talking about in rule 44E. So we said rule 44E, where it says a fees in a slab rate for 3 clauses and a fixed rate for 2 clauses. We saw that. So here whatever has been filed before 1st September 21 in the old R, where still order has been passed, will be transferred to bar. So they will not be said that it is not a valid application. So it will just be transferred to the bar to say that they can continue with that particular application. And as we said earlier, for the process we examined, that is copy, examine, where it is not allowed and how an order is passed, the time limit and everything. For everything a faceless scheme might be notified, where in that particular faceless scheme, whenever we have discussed about this concept of faceless scheme, we have always given a time limit within which the central government can process a scheme, and whenever they are processing a notification under that particular section, they will have to apply. They will have to apply before both the houses. So the time limit given for this is 31st March 23. So that is the effect from thing. So whenever an application is aggrieved by this particular order, the High Court order, he can go before the High Court. So the time limit we have, as far as High Court, what we have seen earlier is 120 days. Here the time limit is 60 days. So it must be applied within 60 days, and if required, an extension could be given for plus 30 days. If required, plus 30 days could be given. The scheme may be notified by the central government on the process on how an assessing officer can proceed with the High Court against the order of authority for advance ruling. So with this we wind up the provisions of authority for advance ruling. So thank you for the session.